Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about types of real numbers. We're going to be talking about rational numbers, irrational numbers, integers, and absolute value, and as well as positive and negative. So we're going to be looking at all these types of numbers and kind of saying, well, what's what? What does that mean to be rational? What does that mean to be a irrational number? So in your notes, you have a couple of definitions that we're going to work on. And so we have integers. One of our types of real numbers that we have are called integers. These are whole numbers that are both positive and negative. So these are whole numbers. That means like 8 would be an example, -5 would be an example, and also 97. I want you to come up with your own for your examples to share with the class tomorrow, but these are all just whole numbers on both sides of 0, positive and negative. And then to also be a part of that are rational numbers. These are a little bit more exclusive, meaning that they're special, more specific. These are all numbers that can be written as a ratio or a fraction, where the top and bottom are numbers, so like a over b, and b is, neither one of them is 0. Okay, so an example of that would be 5/12. Another example would also be any whole number would be that. So all whole numbers. So 8, because you could write this as a fraction as 8/1. In addition to that, every decimal, because decimals are written as tenths, which are can be written as fractions. So like 97 hundredths would be the same as 97 over 100, and as well as negative numbers. So -2.5 or just -2. And so I want you to write your own example. It could be a fraction, it could be positive, it could be negative, it could be a decimal. So all those different things could be a rational number. It could be written as a terminating decimal, which means stops. Okay? Irrational numbers, however, are numbers that don't stop. Okay? That cannot be written as a fraction or as a terminating decimal. Okay? Or as a decimal that repeats itself. Cannot be written as a fraction or ratio, which means they change every time. Our most popular one, we celebrated its day over the weekend, is pi. And if you remember it, if you know anything about pi, it's delicious. No, the other pi. Cannot be written as a ratio. Okay, so pi is also known as 3.14924, and it keeps going and going and going and going and going and going, and it just keeps going forever, changing every single time. So we have to round it. Okay. Also, things called square roots sometimes can be that, where if you think about things that are squared, 2 squared would be 4. So the square root of 4 would be 2. It's kind of like its inverse. Okay, but some numbers don't have that, like root 5 or root 2. These just keep going and going. So if I were to write a number 9.2, and it can be negative, it doesn't matter, 9.275398721, and it just keeps going and going and going. So she could write an example of that. You don't have to keep going with it. You can stop whenever you feel like it, but write an example to share. Absolute value is a number's distance from 0. And so think about this. You have a -9. Its distance from 0 is 9 units. If you have a positive 9, its absolute value is 9 because it's 9 from 0. It is always going to be positive. Okay, even if the number is negative. If I write something like -4, absolute value, draw 2 lines beside it, and its absolute value is 4. It's 4 from 0. 5.2, its absolute value is 5.2. So I have to draw those 2 lines, and it tells me the absolute value of that number, and it's always going to be positive. It's distance from 0. Positive and negative numbers. Positive and negative numbers are either rational numbers or they can be integers. That can be on either side of 0. So if I think about these are all, these over here, here's 0. You go to the right of that, your value becomes greater. So the farther right you go, the greater the value. The farther left you go, the lesser the value. So if you go farther left in 0, negative 3,000 is actually less than negative 2 because of where it is on the number line. It is negative 2 is closer to 0 than negative 3,000. And so in your practice tomorrow in class, after we do a little bit of just review of these types of things, we're going to fill out this organizer. You're going to do some practice. And being able to understand, well, what is a rational number? What's an integer? What are natural numbers? And what are irrational numbers? These are all types of numbers.